Hi guys, I want to show you how to create a one-point perspective room. So the demo that we did in class last week was not very effective in terms of my instruction. And it's been a while since I've actually got to sit down and kind of play around with this. And I'm usually not drawing within a notebook. But that being said, guys, I want you to understand a lot of learning is trial and error, making mistakes. Even to this day, it's like drawing, I make mistakes all the time. And I want you guys to not be afraid of that aspect of what we're doing in this class. Okay. If you ever have a question, feel free to ask. If I don't know, I'm not going to sit there and pretend like I know it. I'll sit there and try to figure out ways to maybe research it and problem solve. Okay. Because that's what learning is all about. So, first thing we need to do is we need to establish the back wall of our room. And we're going to do that by uh, thinking about just the room that we have at home or even the room that we're in. Most rooms are rectangular, right? And all I'm saying is because we're working on our sketchbook journal, we need to use our tools correctly. And I'm going to go in and I'm going to kind of tap it here on the side so that this is not all wonky or crooked. We want to create some nice parallel lines with the paper. Okay, so this line and this line will be parallel if we line up these outside edges. And I'm going to draw the top part of my room. Okay. Getting used to the tools are definitely something that's going to take a while for some of you because it's like you haven't done this before. So I don't want you to be like, oh no, I'm not going to be able to get this. It's like, no, you just need to give yourself some time, give yourself some wiggle room. Okay. Learning is a trial and error and allowing yourself some grace to figure things out. Okay? Because some of you, this is going to make a ton of sense, and others, you're going to be like, I don't know what Bernal's talking about. Okay. And the nice thing about these videos are you can stop and record, or not record, you can stop and hit pause and you can hit play when you're ready to go. So here's the top of my back wall. So the ceiling, here's the floor. So where the floor is going to meet that back wall. So I told you these triangles having a 90-degree angle. So this angle is a 90-degree angle or a right angle. I'm going to go in and I'm going to try to line up these points. So I'm going to draw in my first vertical wall, and I'm going to draw in my second vertical wall. So in terms of terminology or vocabulary that I need you guys to be aware of, I said this line and this line are parallel. They run in the same direction, the equal distance from each other. Technically speaking, this vertical line, they are parallel as well. What we need to be aware of is the term perpendicular. So this 90-degree angle that is created, this line runs this way, this line runs this way. That's what's considered a perpendicular line. And I'm sure you guys have heard that in your math class. So we need to find the horizon line. So we can imagine, all right, that's our back wall. How are we going to draw the ceiling and the wall and the floor? Usually by drawing an X. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take you could take your ruler or you could take your triangle, and I'm going to go in and I'm going to line up this corner here and this corner here. Okay. And once I got them lined up, because my ruler and my triangle, some of them are only so long, um, I'm going to go in and very lightly, not super, super dark. Guys, don't get carried away with your lines because sometimes, like I said, we do make mistakes. And sometimes if you get too heavy-handed, it's kind of hard to erase them. So now that I got that, I'm going to go in this point and this point. We're going to try to find the center. And you can see I just turned my triangle because it's like, sometimes it doesn't fit on my paper, especially working in the sketchbook journal. Okay. I got those 2 points lined up, there and there. And all I'm going to do, so lines up, and very lightly I'm going to draw in that particular line. So, do you remember how we were like talking about vanishing point? And we said the vanishing point is somewhere on the horizon line. It's right here. X marks the spot. this is my vanishing point. Technically speaking, we can't see it because it's behind this wall. But for the sake of this demonstration, I could go in and I can say, okay, this is, and I'm just going to very lightly draw in my horizon line. Okay, so I don't think we really need it right now, or need to be, but I don't think it's bad to be aware that this is your horizon line. And when you're drawing in linear perspective, and I don't think you guys need to know this too much, but your horizon line is usually your eye level of what you're looking at something. Okay, and that, for me, like when I first learned that, I was like, I don't really get that. But I'm saying because we're beginners, all I'm saying is we just need to know vanishing point, horizon line. Okay, so some artists will go in and they'll write VP, or you could write it out. You could write vanishing point. Okay, because we haven't done this yet. Vanishing point, and I'm just going to very lightly say this is horizon line. Okay, so that being said, for some students, they're going to sit there and be like, oh, kind of confused, don't know what I'm looking at. You could go in, and I'm just saying because this is the back wall, you can erase these lines if you need to, like especially the diagonal ones. Because as I mentioned, sometimes you could get lost real quick because there's a lot of information being thrown at you. And it's not like you do this every day. Some of you probably have had practice in elementary school, or you had another teacher and they've explained it to you and it made sense. But it's all comes through practice, practice, practice. Okay. So to me, here's my back wall. Here's my ceiling. Here's one wall. Here's two walls. Here is my floor. Okay. A room will usually have furniture, and we need to go in and start figuring out our furniture. Okay. So I'm going to go in and say, maybe I could draw in a dresser. So just like we did on drawing a street scene, we can imagine, all right, furniture is kind of lined up against the wall, right? So I'm going to kind of line up, because I'm using my sketchbook journal. I'm going to go in and say, I'm going to try to draw a dresser. Okay. So there's the corner of, so there's a floor, and then I get my vertical line going up. So we're just kind of guesstimating. We're not trying to get super crazy precise exact with this, but you're just trying to have a general idea for your room. Okay, so I'm going to try to draw a dresser, because a dresser is essentially just like a rectangle, and we've already done this in space, right? We did this with the room. So if I were to go in and off these points, okay, because it's all receding in space, or it's converging to the vanishing point, if I wanted to, like if I were to, this line's already drawn towards the vanishing point, I could take my triangle, and you don't have to draw the lines all the way, so you don't have a million lines all converging to that point, but you can just bring it in a little bit, like so far. Okay, same thing with the top here. Line up the vanishing point, line up that corner, bring it in so far. Okay, same thing with the top part of your dresser. Okay, lining up this top point, lining up your vanishing point, and trying to get those lines established. So right now, this should look pretty familiar to you. Okay, so because we have these vertical lines, right, of the dresser, we also need to get this last vertical line to establish where it's going to end. Okay, so I wouldn't want it like super crazy long, because it's like, well, We're trying to just get furniture drawn. So that works for me. Now that I have this point, okay, I could go in with my triangle and get this last line that's parallel with the top of my dresser. Okay. We want to think about dressers. We want to think about rugs. We want to think about doors. We want to think about windows. We want to think about a bed. Okay. So there's our initial shape for our dresser. Okay. So if I were to want to draw like maybe a bed, um, you know that beds are pretty long and they take up a pretty decent amount of your space in your room. And because I'm just trying to show you guys this for general instruction, I don't want to start it over here because it's like we don't know where this line extends out. We're going to go in and just draw the bottom part of our bed. Okay, so I'm going to start it somewhere over here. So I'm going to draw this out. Okay, and I know beds are pretty long. They take up a pretty decent chunk of your room. And I'm actually going to extend it out a little bit more past center because I don't want the line of my bed to end here. Usually it's kind of weird, especially when you're doing your connecting points. I'm just going to go out a little bit past that, okay, past the center point. So now that I have this line, I could go in and draw, I don't know, maybe the bed frame. And I'm going to sit there and say, I know bed frames are not super tall. Maybe go a little bit skinnier. And I'm going to start here and there. There's my bed frame. So this is the corner of our room, right? So all I'm going to do is connect this line up. I'm going to connect this line up. So don't forget, I'm lining it up on the bottom so I have nice vertical and parallel vertical lines, parallel horizontal lines. And it also creates some perpendicular lines as well. Okay. So now that I have that, I could go in and say, okay, here's the height of my bed frame or my height of my bed, and I can line up this outside point to my vanishing point. Okay, so I'm only concerned about this one. I'm going to be concerned about this one. Going to go in, line them little boogers up, and get that drawn in. Okay, we don't know where we want it to end. We can just kind of eyeball it for now, okay, because I can make a judgment call. So I'm just trying to get my vanishing points established. Okay, and just looking at my room, okay, I would imagine this bed would not start way over here and wouldn't end way over here unless you have like some monster king size bed. I'm just guesstimating like a bed size that most people would have. It's probably somewhere in there, because like I said, the bed does usually take up a decent amount of space. And so now I could go in with my triangle, use my triangle, line it up on the outside edge, and get this last edge of my bed taken care of. Okay. Okay. And like I said, it's not a bad idea to go in and erase lines that are maybe going to confuse you. And you're like, oh, I don't know what I'm looking at. Because I remember being in school, and when I was learning this, sometimes I would have so many lines. I'm like, what? I'm so lost. Okay. So if I want to, I can sit there and say, maybe I might want to draw the headboard of my bed. Okay. So all I'm going to essentially do is I can go in and say, okay, my headboard, I want it to be this wide. Okay. So all I did was establish this point. So I'm going to go in and maybe extend my headboard up on my bed. And we're not 100% sure because we don't want it to run up to the ceiling, but we we want to make sure that we have some proportion. So I'm saying everything looks like it's the right size. And you can be pretty good about guesstimating, like, how big or how small something is. And I know I had mentioned earlier that I said, oh, the vanishing point or the horizon line is usually eye level. Okay, so I'm just saying that's usually where a person is standing or their eye level. So if you're standing up next to your bed, you could sit there and be like, well, if my eye level is here on the horizon line, maybe this is not as tall as it needs to be. Maybe you could say, okay, if I'm standing up here, you can make a guesstimation and be like, oh yeah, maybe my bed frame, that's where the top of it's going to end. Okay, so I'm going to take my triangle and draw this line out. Okay, and I'm going to start connecting some of these points. I can connect this point and this point. So I'm going to erase this because I kind of got carried away with the height. But like I said, I was just trying to guesstimate where everything is going to be laid out. Okay, so got the vanishing point lined up. Got that lined up. And I know I'm not going to extend it all the way over because that doesn't make sense. Vanishing point, this one. Okay. So, and then I know this point is where the bed ends, right? Take my triangle. Draw that vertical line up. Okay. This line is horizontal. So just this last point, get that drawn in. And now I can erase the lines that I don't need. Okay. So you can see that, yeah, people were like, well, why'd you draw the horizon line? You can't see it. Like I said, the horizon line is usually where your eye level is of like, so if you were standing or you were sitting, usually most people are standing when they're looking at scenes. But I'm saying that kind of helped me gauge like how tall my initial bed was. So I'm saying like people are like, those are just boxes. That doesn't make any sense. It's like, well, don't we recall that the rooms usually have doors? And I showed you guys a trick where I was like, okay, if this is my room, okay, eye level. So I'm just saying usually where people are standing, eye level is usually um, on the horizon line. But because we're drawing a scene level, I'm just going to guesstimate. So if this is my eye level, you got to think there's some room up above, right? In terms of the top of your door. Usually when you're looking around your room, you can tell there's like, I don't know, a couple feet above the door. So I'm going to go in and just maybe draw a door here. And you can put the door anywhere you want. It could be, if you want to put in the center. Usually doors are kind of off to the side, but that's totally up to you. Okay. Because we could draw a couple doors. And we did that in the last demo. So line it up on the bottom. We don't want to have like a super crazy wide door. We got to start to kind of guesstimate or even estimate like how large we think the door is in relation to the rest of the room. Okay. So proportion is something that's kind of tricky to learn, especially for beginners, because even when I was in school, I was like, whoa, this is hard. This is difficult. And I want you guys to know that this is not easy. It takes time. Okay. But if you follow the whole rule of vanishing point, establishing the back wall, establishing the horizon line, once you draw like one or two objects, that kind of gives you a pretty good point of reference. Okay. So let's pretend I wanted to draw a door here. Okay. I could go in and throw some lines in and say, oh yeah, that's great. But like I said, if one door has already been established, you could consider that your point of reference. Okay. So my dock camera doesn't want to keep acting weird. I'm going to line it up on the outside edge here, kind of tap it. And I'm just going to just extend this line So I extended this line here. So this is where all the doors, so if I were to draw a vanishing point line here, come on camera, be nice. And if I were to extend this line over here, like, okay, I can sit there and say, okay, these are where all the doors, if you look in a room, they're all going to be the same height throughout the room unless you have some builder that's making some whacked out rooms. I'm going to take my vanishing point and this line, match them up, extend that out. Same thing over here. If I wanted to sit there and say, okay, if I wanted to add a door over here, and I don't technically have to add a door. Maybe if I wanted to, I could draw a window. So furniture, I know when I gave you that first little assignment, I was like, hey, draw 3 pieces of furniture. So right now, I have this kind of box looking thing or a rectangle that's going to be a dresser. And then I have my bed. So maybe I might want to, I don't know, draw a little nightstand. And I could show you guys how to do that. Or maybe even a carpet. So carpet's pretty easy, like kind of just like a throw rug here. I can take my triangle. Oh, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's focus on the doors. Okay. So if I wanted to, I could go in and say, okay, because maybe this is the door that's to like the bathroom, and this could be the door to like the hallway or something. Okay. Straight up, and then you could guesstimate like how wide you think the door is. It's not going to be ginormous, but kind of guesstimate like, okay, because it's in perspective, it's probably not going to be as wide as that because perspective tends to distort things. Okay. I know I mentioned to you guys, maybe you want to draw the inside of the door jamb or like the wall. You want to show that there's some volume, there's some thickness going on here. Okay. And I showed you this last week in the demo. Okay. So here's the tricky part. And hopefully if this camera wants to play nice, I went in, I drew my first line, I drew my second line, that's showing the thickness of my wall, and I'm going to just draw in the bottom corner so it shows. That the space has some dimension to it, because we don't want everything to look super, super flat. Okay. In regards to the dresser, guys, you remember when we first started out and I was like, hey, let's draw an X here and we'll figure out the center point. Same trick applies with the dresser. If we want to get some drawers that look like they're actually drawn correctly, okay, I can go in here and then match up the corner points, lightly draw an X, corner point. So this is on the front side, okay. Okay, so when you're looking at a dresser, right, there's usually like some, like the drawers don't extend to the very end. Maybe some dressers do. Some dressers might have like a small gap all the way around. Okay. And I'll show you guys how to do that. If I wanted to sit there and say this dresser, the drawers kind of have some space around it. So I'll show you what I'm talking about here. I'm going to go in based off this point that I just drew. So I came a little bit off the bottom and I draw it straight up. Okay. So using my triangle, bottom, draw that straight up. Okay. Now that I have that, where it intersects right here, I can go to my vanishing point. So the old TVs, so probably before I don't want to say before you all, were all born, but the old TVs were really super thick and boxy and clunky. Um, this would almost even look like a old TV because it's so big and boxy. Okay, so you could see that I'm just from this first starting point, drew this line up. There's my second point, and then drew this point to my vanishing point. There's my second point. From here, straight down, and then all I'm going to do is connect my points. So you could even see this one intersects here, and it even intersects with my vanishing point. Okay, so this X, people are going to be like, what am I going to do with that? It's like, well, you can go in and erase that. And I'm going to go in, and here's where your ruler comes in. And you can guesstimate this. You don't have to be super precise. But if you want to, this back line, so where I want my, let's see, I can measure this, and I could sit there and say, okay, this is actually really super close to an inch. Okay, so I could go in and then in there and be like, all right, let's say, we'll say 5/16, 3, 4, 5, 5/16, 5/16. Okay, and like I said, it doesn't have to be exact, but I'm just saying, just trying to imagine, like, because even drawers all have different sizes. Some can be skinny, some can be thick. I'm going to go in, back to my vanishing point. There's the bottom of my first drawer. And I'm like, I'm going to make that judgment call. Remember I said not everything's perfect? I'm going to move this little dot up a little bit. I feel like it needs to go up a little bit. There we go. Sometimes, guys, when you're drawing, you can just tell something doesn't look right. And I was like, I wasn't super happy. I made a judgment call. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to move that up. You can do that with your drawings. All I'm asking is that you're using your vanishing point. So when I look at this, that looks like it's pretty equal distant, right? And to me, all I'm saying is now I have my design for my dresser. And guys, usually on dressers, you could sit there and say, okay, if there was a vase, if you wanted to establish a mirror, like for a vanity here, that's super quick, super easy to do. I could sit there and say, okay, vanity. So I'm talking about the vanity mirror. Remember your eye line or the horizon line is where eye level is. Okay. I could go in and say, okay, that's the top of the vanity right here. Line it up with the vanishing point. So sorry if my head gets in the view of the shot. We're going to draw it all the way. It's back corner. Just going to draw that line up. Okay. And I could sit there and say, that's the mirror. And then you usually, a dresser, you can have clothes, you can have, books, you can have a vase. Think about what's in your room. Usually a room has posters. Room will usually have like pillows. You guys can get that drawn in. Maybe here on the side of the bed, you can draw in some side drawers. Maybe if you wanted to measure them, you could go in and draw 1 drawer, 2 drawer, 3 drawer, 4 drawer. That's totally up to you. Okay. If I want to get that carpet in, because like I said, I kind of got carried away there for a while. If I want to make sure that my carpet fits here in the correct space, I can sit there and say, okay, this is where I want the back of the carpet. Let's make it a long skinny carpet. Let's make a long skinny carpet. Okay. I'm going to sit there and say, okay, that's